Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the CONVO Couch. I am Fiorella Isabel, and I am here with a very special guest, Jose Caballero. Am I saying it right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, that's the Spanish way of saying it. Who is running for office, and he's going to be my co-host today. Pasta is working, and he's also going to tell us a little bit about himself and why he's running. So, Jose, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you.
Of course. And we've been trying to coordinate this for a little bit. So I'm excited to have you here. And I kind of wanted to start by asking you, who you are, why you're running for office, and kind of what got you into this political revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jose Caballero. I was actually born and raised in small town Texas, and I actually grew up as a really staunch conservative Republican, believe it or not. So really, I've taken a really long journey. Wow. And I'll make a long story short here is, so coming from that background, going into the Navy, serving as a reactor operator for a total of 6 years, going to school in San Diego really changed my entire perspective of what my political ideology was. Mm-hmm. And, now I've managed campaigns. I own my own consulting firm. I'm a national Bernie delegate. I'm a California delegate for the 78th district, and I'm also on the Central Committee for San Diego County as well. Wow. So we've done a lot of work in getting that representation, and we're running against Congresswoman Susan Davis in California District 53. She has been there for 19 years. Mm-hmm. She has been a huge receiver of corporate contributions, particularly from the defense contractors. Mm-hmm. She has completely let down our troops and our veterans because right now we have 20 veterans a day killing themselves, and the fact that she hasn't done anything with that much influence in the Armed Services Committee when you have such a huge veteran population across the country. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say, Johnny had it up on the screen.
Oh yeah, so let's take a look at some of her corporate donors.
Where her money comes from.
So this was last quarter. Yes. And these are the corporate PACs that she received money from. So as you can see, Walmart put right at the top. You have Honeywell International, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin. I'm sure a lot of you know that is defense contractors.
Absolutely.
So she has been profiting she has been getting benefits from the war economy by being able to maintain her seat. And we got to stop her from being able to do that. And she's only passed 2 bills since she's been in Congress as well. One was renaming a post office. So I'm sure that was tough.
Wow. And people like to go at Bernie Sanders for his lack of doing anything in his whole time, right?
That's right.
I've definitely seen her name in defense bills, actually, now that I recall. And I mean, it's great that you're primarying her, because I think a lot of these people don't even do anything anymore. They don't even campaign anymore because they know that their seat is well protected because they have all this money that comes in. So how do you plan on beating an opponent that is so big? Because after AOC won her seat, a lot of us have been coming out and saying, we're running for office, we're going to do it. But it's really tough to go against such a big money candidate.
Absolutely. One thing that they use to make sure that they can keep their seats is they use intimidation to make other candidates like ourselves not run, because they make it seem like it's such an uphill battle.
Right.
But then when you do run, all of a sudden their record becomes ready for everybody to see. So if you go and if you look at the media outlets in, let's say, local San Diego, they have already been they've already been doing interviews with us. We're even going to be on Fox 5 soon.
Perfect.
And the reason that they're doing that is because they claim that we are the first legitimate candidate to run against Susan Davis, because this district is so blue, right? It's a 19 plus district. So now people can say, well, now we actually have an option. Susan Davis isn't for healthcare, for Medicare for all. We are, right? She's not for canceling student debt. We are. Education for all. We are. Bringing our troops home. We are, right? And those are the type of things that the voters are starting to see. And we actually have an actual option on the ballot. And we've gotten endorsements from the former DA, progressive candidate, candidate Genevieve Jones-Wright, Dave Myers. We've gotten the San Diego Progressive Democratic Club endorsement, the local Arbor Revolution endorsement. We're in the tank for the DSA endorsement soon.
Perfect.
So we are moving quickly, and I think that they're not ready. If you look at Susan Davis, she raised around $92,000 this last quarter. She spent $89,000 immediately.
Wow.
So she doesn't even have really a strong war chest, and only 1.32% of that money came from regular people like you and me.
Of course.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about your area, your district. Are they Latino people? Are they hodgepodge of people? Are they because a lot of our progressive candidates were able to kind of push through the big money donors by going and canvassing and talking to people, because if you are part of the community, they're going to know that right away.
Yes.
Some of these candidates don't even live in the districts they represent. Some of these candidates, have homes in very elitist type of places and don't ever set foot or talk to their community members.
That's right. That's right. And, and the people know it. Like, when we go out to knock on doors, voters are like, wow, you're an actual candidate looking to actually support us. And when I say, are you for Medicare for all? When I say, are you education for all? They immediately like, yes. And I was like, well, Susan isn't. And they're like, right. Well, I guess we're voting for you. So we are running a strong knocking campaign, and we're going to knock on every door we can. And
what, is there a Republican running as well?
So usually there is. Usually I like to say there's a clown car of Republicans that run, and they usually divide the vote up amongst themselves so much that it only takes 20,000 to get into the primary. However, not this cycle. This cycle, they have not come out and said that they're going to be running. Okay. The previous general candidate, she's not showed interest that she's going to run. Another Republican elected official doesn't seem like they're going to run. And I think the Republicans have just resigned this seat because they're losing seats in Orange County, right? And they're trying to maintain the seat in 51, which is next door in East County, San Diego. So I'm sorry, not 51, 50. So what I think they're turning their tail and running, and they know that there's no chance of winning, so maybe they're not spending the resources. But who knows, right? It's still early to say, but the election is coming up soon. It's March 3rd, so decisions got to be made quickly. I mean, we start getting signature gathering next month. So that's when we start. Yeah.
So just so everybody knows, California has the jungle primary when it comes to congressional candidates. So it could be two Democrats facing each other. And that's what it's looking like. And that's that's actually really good for us, because you're right. That gives people another option. So what inspired you to run? Because in 2016, you said you were a Bernie delegate. How was that experience for you?
Well, 2016 was a very harrowing year. I actually ran for San Diego City Council in District 7, which is the northern part of the district, for 53. And I was a national Bernie delegate, like you said. We went to Philadelphia. We were in part of the California delegation. We were chanting and protesting. And it was extremely disheartening because there were so many Hillary delegates that were there for the fanfare and not for the issues. I cannot tell you how many Hillary delegates would come up to me, tap me on the shoulder, and ask me, what's wrong with TPP? What is TPP? Right. And because we're all against the TPP, obviously. And, when Hickenlooper, when he went and spoke on that convention stage, we were saying, ban fracking, right? And then when Pineda came on board, we made sure that we chanted no more war. And I had to prevent a fight from happening between a Marine and a Hillary delegate, which was a Bernie delegate that was intimidated and taunted to try to instigate a fight. There was a Hillary delegate that came up to me and tried to instigate a fight with me. We were shoved to the top of the bleachers. It was a very, very trying experience. Now, is things changed? I'm not sure yet. When you see the fervor for Joe Biden and you still see the latent hatred for Bernie supporters, it's really hard to say what's going to happen now, right? And I'm hoping that cooler heads are going to prevail, and we're going to be focusing on the issue. Because if you look at the debates, right, you'll see that we're actually discussing issues. You know, when you look at debate night 1 with Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, they won the night 2 as well, because they did so well defending Medicare for all in such a way that everybody had to like try to defend. And the centrist position is losing a lot of ground.
Right. And let's all not forget that Bernie Sanders was the one who has been fighting for Medicare for all since 1971. And everybody else just kind of jumped in and now has their own Medicare for all bill.
That's right.
So, you know, let's like kind of want to shift into that. What do you think about the presidential primary that's going on right now as we speak? How do you see it kind of playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've had the privilege to look at these things pretty closely, and you know, we can look at historical precedents of Joe Biden, right? Because when we talk about who we're gonna face, we have to talk about Joe Biden,
right.
And we have to think about what about Joe Biden is making him the front runner right now. And what if you look at historical context, you'll see every time Joe Biden is a front runner, and then they start talking about the issues and his record, he puts his foot in his mouth over and over and over, and eventually he just falls off. Now, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, when he falls off, it becomes a question of where those votes are going to go. Are they going to go to Warren? Are they going to go to Harris? Are they going to go to Pete Buttigieg? And that's where we have to really start thinking about what's it's going to be. So my prediction is that it's going to be Bernie, Warren, Harris. I think that's where the 3 are going to land. And we need to be able to have a really strong conversation as progressives on how are we going to beat Kamala Harris, if that's the point. Because she's good on her feet. She has a lot of notoriety. She has a lot of support in California. It's going to be very difficult to be able to knock her off if she stays where she's at and Biden keeps taking the slings and arrows. Now, we can hope that Tulsi Gabbard took a really strong fatal blow on her record. Now, will it stick? We'll see. And if Tulsi Gabbard has any major role to play in this debate, and I love Tulsi, you know, I love her stance on anti-war, but if she can go in and body block Harris and take her down, I think we can actually be looking at a really, really great end of the primary. So that's my quick hot takes analysis there.
Yeah, I mean, do you really think Biden is the front runner though? I mean, because a lot of these polls were saying back in 2016, Hillary is going to beat Trump, so-and-so is the front runner. And then, you know, look where that landed us. I think I don't know if we can pay attention to all these polls, but I do think we have to be cautious.
Yes.
Because we can't just be like, oh, we have it in the bag either.
Right. We can't be.
Yeah.
And you know, and you bring up a great point. Who are the polls polling? They're polling, you know, older, 55 plus on landlines, and they call the same people over and over and over. However, as much as we would love to think that our American population and American voters is educated enough, a lot of people's window to the current events is that television set.
Exactly.
You know, and when they hear it over and over and over again that Biden is ahead, they start to believe it. Yeah. Just like the electability argument with Hillary Clinton in 2016. So there is a lot of echoes that are coming from 2016 that are now showing themselves predominantly in our election cycle. Let's just hope that the American voter, whenever they hear electability, they discount it immediately. Because if Donald Trump can get elected, then electability doesn't exist.
Right. Electability doesn't exist. And I think a lot of us are more worried about who can beat Donald Trump, because it's one thing to say, okay, we can get even what Elizabeth Warren nominated, and you know, she's not that bad, whatever, she faces Donald Trump. The thing is that, I mean, her beating Donald Trump, that's the thing. Anybody beating Donald Trump is also the bigger picture.
Right,
we need somebody who can beat Donald Trump. And analysis after analysis shows that the one person that can do that is Bernie Sanders.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's kind of like, you know, we have to watch how we're working the primary and how we're working the general. And let me ask you, what do you think about the independent voters? Because a lot of the Democrats focus on centrist votes and where the centrist votes are going to go. But the reality is that the mainland America isn't really centrist.
No.
The mainland America is more of independent thinkers or people that don't vote because they feel like it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
So I believe we need to target independent voters and non-voters more than anything. And I think that's the mistake I think a lot of campaigns are making, where they're only targeting that Democratic voters.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'll speak from experience as a consultant on this topic. most consultants will tell you in a primary, you go after your base, you go after the people who are going to vote guaranteed, and then you start focusing on the people who are non-voters, right? Because the non-voter, getting them to vote in a general election is already hard enough. To get them to vote in a new primary election on a different month than it's been in years is also going to be a very, very heavy toll. Now, that being said, this election cycle is very different because people, since 2016 with the election of Donald Trump and the blue wave of 2018, people are starting to see that maybe their vote actually does matter. And that is going to be a new wild card that we're starting to see because people are suffering from student loan debt. They're suffering from medical cost. And if they think that their vote will alleviate their pain when it comes to that suffering that they're encountering every day, and they see their families and friends encountering every day, I think they may be more willing to pick up that ballot and actually dropping it in the mailbox because there's an actual opportunity that is being perceived. So I it's almost like a yes and no, on that question is like, is it going to turn out? And I think we are. I think that young people are going to turn out heavier this election than they've ever have in any election cycle. And I think that's what's going to be the edge for people like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely I agree that there's a lot of issues that people are very passionate about. And I think if Donald Trump's election did anything, was kind of put it all out there and expose everything that's been wrong with this country that we haven't dealt with, right? Donald Trump got elected as a result of things that we haven't dealt with. And not just, because everybody is a racist, but because people felt neglected by the Democratic Party. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that literally said, "Oh, I voted for Donald Trump because I thought he was just anti-establishment and different," And so I think that the person that is going to beat someone like Donald Trump has to be the opposite, like a real anti-establishment outsider kind of person. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders, you were at the Bernie Sanders town hall in San Diego or Vista, and I was there as well. And Bernie Sanders said that this is the most important election of our time. And I wholeheartedly agree. If we thought 2016 was the most important election of our time, it's this one. I mean, we're at a point of no return here when it comes to climate change, and when it comes to student debt, when it comes to Medicare for all, when it comes to all of these issues. And if we've seen anything on the crowds, because you see these town halls, you see these rallies, we just have to be able to translate that into actual votes. What do you think about the new voting system in California? I know it depends on the counties, but tell me a little bit more about where you are.
Okay, so right now, the County of San Diego has been piloting some programs of like voting centers where you can actually drop your ballot off at public libraries. We're also going to be able to do turn in other people's ballots for them. So we're there's going to be a lot of new strategies that campaigns are going to be implementing, what are going to be called ballot drags. So basically, we're going to go door to door asking people if they need help with their ballots, and then we can sign it right there on the back for them, and then we mail it in, right? And that is going to be legal. So we're going to be able to have real, if we can talk to young people and be like, hey, does your family vote? Well, if you get your mom, dad, and grandma to go and vote, then you can turn it in for them, and we can teach them that. So there's a lot of that happening. Also, in the next election cycle where it's going to be mandatory, there's going to be just giant hubs of where you can vote. You can vote at those locations where you can actually be, let's say you're in North County, San Diego, but you live in South County, you can go and vote in North County, San Diego, and they'll print out your ballot on the spot for you to vote right there. So we're going to be in that same day voter registration as well.
Right,
so you're going to be able to vote. You're going to be able to register the vote at those locations and do massive ballot drop-offs there as well. So it's getting easier and easier in the state of California to vote. And what I love about it is there's a receipt. There's a paper receipt trail, and California is not getting away from that. We're not going to a fully automated system,
right? Because I mean, it's different by county, but in LA County, you're going to turn in you're going to use the machine. It's going to print it out, and then that's your ballot. So you still have a paper ballot.
That's right.
You know, but the machines that are being used, I think a lot of people are still questioning those. I mean, I think just a lot of people are just scared because of what happened and all of the shenanigans that happened in 2016. And I think the key is to actually go and attend these meetings and attend these simulations and talk to people about the questions they may have way before the deadline.
Exactly. And one thing we have to all understand as progressives, it's not going to be easy to do this. They are going to hold us back as much as possible. So we have to vote early and teach others how to vote as well. So we as progressives need to be the first people voting, not the last, because then we should be helping everybody else know what they're doing. And then we can then verify that our votes are being counted. Because if we're voting on election day and then trying to find out if our vote was counted, it's already too late. You're going to be able to track your vote the whole way through if you do it early. So it's important as progressives that we do the extra work, because they're not going to hand this to us. So for me, vote early. By the time you get that ballot, you better have the list of candidates that you're ready to vote for.
Yeah. And I mean, people are going to give out lists. I'm sure DSA is going to give out lists and endorsements because sometimes people need help like deciding on who to vote for. So that all of these things are going to be done. I wanted to kind of ask you something. Like you served, right? What about serving kind of like made your opinion against war, and what is your opinion on the United States kind of military industrial complex and the way, you know, we pretty much act like the police of the world?
We do. So this is serving in the military was a very personal experience for me, because when I first joined, I was an 18-year-old kid, didn't really know what I was going to do. You know, I wasn't really given direction to go to a 4-year college. They wanted me to go to community college or just go straight into a workforce. I said no, so I went into the Navy to become a nuclear operator because it was a hard job, but I also wanted to serve the country, and that was part of it. Now, flash forward, I'm qualified reactor operator, just stood a long watch. You could hear the planes taking off the deck of the ship, so you could hear the boo, boo, and my job was to make sure that steam demand was there. That later that evening, after that watch, they had a captain's call. Captain's call is a closed circuit TV that you have to watch because the captain's telling the crew something. Well, the air boss, who's the person in charge of the air wing, comes on, and this is video, mind you, and he's like, "We got some great video to show you. We put warheads on foreheads. We're gonna blow up some ragheads." And then everybody around me started to like get excited about this. Now, I not really understanding, you know, me being a reactor operator, this horror of theater of war that I was in. And then on the TV screen, you'd see the grainy image where you would have, you know, caravans of people walking through the mountains of Afghanistan, and then you see a bomb blow up those people. Jeez. Right. And when I saw that, my heart sunk. It was one of the most watershed moments of my life. And it really made me reevaluate my values of what was I doing out there, because I, as a person, don't know if there were children on that caravan. I didn't know who that was. I was taking the word of the military that this was the right thing to do, and I didn't feel confident about that. So I said no more. And so once I served my time, I was done, and I was trying to advocate for no more war and trying to be a veteran for peace. And not only that, and this is where why I'm running and where the progressive veteran that I am now. I had no idea how deep those scars are mentally. From the bullying, from the abuse, from the fact that you don't have autonomy over yourself and your freedom, takes a toll on your psyche, and it takes a toll on everyone's psyche that's in there. The fact of the matter is, we have 20 veterans a day killing themselves to suicide. So we have an epidemic in this country where people are dying from the wounds that they came back. And let me put this into perspective for you. So since 9/11, we've had 139,000 veterans murder themselves. Right now in the armed forces, we have a little over 300,000. So think about that. In 20 years, the current armed forces that are in right now, 1/3 of that rank may die. in 20 years at the rate that we're going.
Because of their own choice.
Because of their own choice, because of the abuse that they suffer. Now, I see you have the Hero's Promise up. If you could pull that up. The Hero's Promise is a military veteran bill of rights that I have authored. And what it does is it has very basic protections for active duty and protections for veterans. You have meal and sleep time protection. You have the right to file a grievance outside of your chain of command. The ability and the right to mental health. For example, I was a reactor operator. It takes me 3.5 years to qualify a reactor operator before I can stand it alone. If I got depressed and took an antidepressant, I lose my job. My career is over. The Navy reassigns me. Right. So you can't even see a therapist without reprisal. We also need to give an end-of-service pension to people, like if they up to 6 years. So if you do 4 years, you get 4 years of base pay, right? And then the veteran stuff is very simple. Education for all, healthcare for all, and making sure that we have housing for all and citizenship for all. Right. We have deported veterans.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Right. And for you to get the Hero's Promise, and this is the best part about it, you have to take one therapy session a month when you're out. So you would go and see a professional to talk about what happened in the military. Because in the military, you're rewarded for being strong and you're punished for being weak. And that becomes a survival mechanism. So a lot of these veterans hide their scars inside because they don't want to be perceived as a weak person that is going to kill themselves until it's too late.
Right.
And that's adding to the epidemic. And that's why we're doing the Hero's Promise. And that's why people across the country, other candidates, even in Massachusetts 7th, Brianna Wu, she's actually going around showing the Hero's Promise to her constituents that are veterans, and she's winning them over. So this is the most comprehensive bill that has ever passed since probably the original GI Bill in the first place. So we're leading, and this is the stuff that we're going to have to do to take on suicide head on. This is what we have to do, and that's what we're going to be fighting for. And
and apart from what these veterans suffer, I mean, it's also the trauma that you live with, knowing that you inflicted harm on another human being, and now to find out, like veterans that served in Iraq, to find out that it was based on a lie.
Yes,
it does something to your psyche, and all of the immigration issues too that we're dealing with. We're dealing people coming in from Honduras, El Salvador, and then we realize that a lot of these people are escaping things that we cause either directly or indirectly by going in there and acting again like destabilizing nations. Absolutely. And acting the police of the world. So there's this idea that if we offered all of our people Medicare for all, education for all, a lot of these people, a lot of these young kids like you were, won't go into the military because they would have kind of an opportunity. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And so the military industrial complex, however, doesn't want that. They need people to fight in their wars.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because right now I know people, and I'm sure every veteran will tell you the same, that they're still in the military right now, hating their lives, hating every minute that they're standing post and just being a part of the military industrial complex. But they don't get out because they need the benefits for their kids,
right,
and their family. So they go and stick out 20 years of misery, pure hell. And they're doing it for their families because there is no safe way out.
Right.
And that's why the Hero's Promise exists. We're unboarding the exit door, so people can actually walk out. And what that does for the military in America is, if we get all the soldiers and sailors that don't want to be in out of the military, you're automatically going to bring up morale for the military and actually turn it back into a volunteer force the way it's supposed to be intended. Right. So, and we have a lot of leadership that's extremely toxic in the military because they're bitter. They're bitter that they had to stay in, and they take that out on their subordinates. And then that subordinate then takes it out on their next subordinate when they become in charge. And it's just a cyclical cycle of abuse and pain and suffering that's ultimately ending men and women's lives. And if we really want to address and actually draw down the military, this is the step that we need to be taking.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I haven't seen anything as great as that, to be honest. And other than ending these wars, obviously, that and enacting this sort of legislation, we need to also look at the obvious elephant in the room, right? There is the issue with Americans dying over guns.
Yes.
And a lot that kind of ties into it, because a lot of people this country, half of this country is so scared and they don't trust the government that they feel like, them having a gun is going to protect them from whatever they don't trust. And, we can talk about, white supremacy. We can talk about the historical racial implications of the Second Amendment. But how do we deal with gun control? Because I think on the left and the right, there's two extremes, right? There's like the right that wants complete freedom. And then there's the left, some elements of the left that are like, no, let's just ban everything. Yeah. How do you feel about the issue and how we can deal with it?
Well, being a person that's been around guns my entire life, especially being in Texas where, I have uncles that have gun sheds that are just full of guns. And then my father being a detective and then me being in the armed forces and being trained in small arms myself, I know a lot about these weapons.
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, I don't own one. Even with my expertise and my training, I do not own a weapon. Why? Because I live in a high populous city where I can call the police and I can have those things taken care of for me. Now, I believe that we should treat and regulate guns like we do a vehicle. So we have an annual registration that we have to pay. We have to take written exams. We have to get eye exams. We have to make sure that we're insured and are a certain age limit to be able to drive a car. Right. So what we need to do is add at least those limits to firearms. And I'll tell you, and my dad, he's a strict conservative Republican as a detective. He's a member of the SWAT team. He was actually trained by one of the Black Hawk Down guys that was in that movie. and he told me himself that he doesn't believe citizens should have assault rifles, because he's afraid of his own people being shot by these weapons. And he feels like the escalation has to go up and up and up. So a lot of conservative police officers don't want so many people to have these assault rifles either. So a real conversation can happen, and conservatives are not being honest. They're not being intellectually honest with the need for these type of regulations, because these conservatives, they're not crying about how hard it is to register your car or take a driving exam. They do that and they pay their private insurance all the time on that stuff, and they don't even bat an eye. But the second you say, well, a car is a deadly weapon, you would agree, and they're like, yeah, so shouldn't all deadly weapons have some form of registration and licensing requirements? And when you make that argument, it's hard to say no. It's really hard to say no. And because I come from that conservative background, I can actually have nuanced conversation about gun rights. Yeah. Because I'm not the scary liberal that they think, is coming for their guns. I'm the reasonable American that looks at the founding fathers documents and like, hey, this actually has the word regulated in it. What does that mean to you? And of course, you're not going to get everywhere those Republicans at all. Yeah. However, there are some that will listen and some that will look at reasonability and know that we're not trying to ban guns. Because when somebody says you're going to ban my guns, I like to say, name me one representative in Congress that is calling for a complete abolishment of firearms in this country. You can't find one. Yeah. And we don't let them play hyperbole. Yeah.
And I think the conversation gets really emotional when these shootings happen, because people react and they're like, oh, we need to just ban all guns and stuff like that. Right. But really that's not where the conversation should be. The conversation should absolutely be with sensible legislation. Yeah, exactly. Which is where I stand too. And you're completely right. Like, if it's so easy for a 17-year-old to go into a gun shop and get a gun, and it's so much harder for him or her to get a license, there's obviously an issue here. And we have a lot of implications, though, in our country that other countries like Australia don't have. Australia is an example I use because they have no guns there. Right. And a lot of people advocate why can't we be like Australia? And the fact of the matter is, we have these issues that are embedded in this country, and we're not, it's just not a viable option. But what is a viable option is to have some sort of legislation.
Absolutely. And I was having a conversation with a voter who cared about this issue pretty much solely. And I even said, look, if you want to shoot your gun and have fun, and shoot targets and things like that, I don't want to really stop you. However, what we should do is we should create facilities where they can secure those weapons in a place that's heavily guarded, and then they can go in, with an ID and with the licensing requirements, and then go in, start shooting some targets. Maybe there's a field out back, and then they put those guns back, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do it for fun. Well, let's create facilities where they can do it for fun, but you don't have to have that fun at home. You know what I mean? And it's a new idea, but there are a lot of people who are like, well, that seems fair. Right. And because a lot of people who have these weapons aren't hunting with them. They say they're for self-defense, but as a trained veteran, in combat arms, when you have a house invasion, you want a shotgun or a handgun, because if you have a long rifle and somebody gets in close quarters in a small hallway, you can completely be beaten very, very quickly. Now, if you have a concealed handgun or a shotgun that's going to spray, you have a better chance of protecting your family. And you also have a better chance of not killing that person right away either. Because a lot of times we have loved ones that come in through a window because they locked their keys out of the house, and then boom, they're shot and they're dead, and there's no taking that back. So we need to make sure we also say and be honest with ourselves about what self-defense is, because having a bigger gun doesn't mean you're safer.
Right.
And people need to realize that.
I think there also is a need for training.
Yes.
Like training, if you're going to own a gun, you have to go to be trained on how to use it. A lot of people like the idea of guns, but they don't know how to use them.
Absolutely.
So it's just
like a car. Like, you can't just go and buy a car without a license. Yeah. You have to know how to use it. You have to follow the rules of the road. That's the type of stuff that we need to do. You need to follow the rules of the road when you have a gun. You don't point it at something unless you want to destroy it. You don't keep the gun loaded. You don't keep the ammo and the gun in the same area. You take the safety lessons, and the weapon, and its power, so therefore you can respect the firearm and even think if you even need it at all. Because I've known people who have learned to shoot, get a gun, feel uncomfortable with having it, and getting rid of it. Why? Because they know the damaging potential that it has. Mm-hmm. And the only way they're going to know that is through training. Yeah. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I got a gun. I'm so tough, right?
And I think this issue also goes hand in hand with a lot of the issues that we have in this country economically, not having healthcare, not having the ability to just take care of normal things, because it's all connected when we really think about it. And I kind of wanted to start, wrapping up and just asking you, what is your main concern, like when it comes to, is it healthcare, education? What is the one issue that you feel like most passionate about?
Well, I would have to say the veteran issue. And even though I am for Medicare for all and Green New Deal and all the things that we all love and know as progressives, right? When I know that, I'll share this with you. So I've had 2 of my shipmates already commit suicide, and they were reactor operators. They were people who served in the nuclear engineering field. But I broke down a few days ago just talking about this and just thinking about this. I met hundreds, thousands of active duty members, sailors, soldiers, and I've interacted with them, had fun, laughed, had drinks, shook in their hand, gave them high fives. I don't know how many of those people are still alive today. How many smiling faces, how many people that would have my back if it came down to it. I don't even know if they're still alive to take care of that family. Mm-hmm. And I just think of that, of how horrible that is, on how horrible that is for our people, our families, and our economy. Everything is devastated when a loss of life happens. And the fact that we drape coffins with these flags, but we can't drape a policy in the flag, is a problem. Yeah. We need to do something, and inaction is enough. And when if we were losing 20 people a day to a disease or to some criminal or a murderer, there would be a manhunt. There would be the CDC would use every resource they had to start ending the thing that is killing 20 people a day if it was a virus. Right. But if it's because it's suicide of our veterans, it just goes completely untouched. Right. Because the politicians, people like Susan Davis, the people that I'm running, don't care. They care about that money from defense contractors. Sorry, I'm getting a little passionate. They get the money from defense contractors, and they turn a blind eye and let child after child after child kill themselves.
Yep.
And so that's what fires me up. That's what gets me out every morning. That the idea that we can save a veteran's life by passing something, by actually doing our job as citizens in Congress, that is why we need to be fighting. Yeah. And that's what all progressives, you need to find a policy. Find a policy. If you're running for office and you're watching this, find a policy and run with it, create it, and become a part of the progressive wave, which is something that we're also leading on. And I'll explain more of that as well, where if you're a progressive candidate running against a Democrat, yeah, we'll be able to do it. So yeah, I get very passionate when I talk about the veteran stuff.
It's a very important issue. I'm extremely passionate about not involving ourselves in more military quagmires.
Absolutely.
and completely staying out of war. So this isn't even an issue that we have to worry about in the first place.
Absolutely.
And I think we can do that. And this president that we have now ran on being an anti-military, anti-interventionist candidate. And he has obviously not been that because of the people who back him, Pompeo and Bolton, who are extremely pro-military. And so our next president has to be completely anti-war, pro-veteran, and actually do things for the VA and for the veterans that this president promised. And we can argue semantics all day, but at the end of the day, this is about our country being psychologically damaged, almost to where we it's just one thing after another, and we can't people are too busy working to make ends meet to stop and consider their mental health, to stop and consider that maybe their government is corrupt and is lying to them, that maybe they need to be involved in the political process. Right. So it's going to take us having these hard conversations. It's going to take us talking to people we don't agree with.
Right.
I think you as a candidate know that you have to address people who may be conservative or maybe more to the left of you, whatever it is, and just talk about the issues. And that's what we need to focus on.
That's right. And I'll tell you, as me being a Democrat, me talking to Republicans and conservatives, they love the hero's promise.
Yeah,
they do. And I've talked to so many veterans and active duty folks. And even when I say the in the service pension, they still love it. So we are on to something, and we got to keep doing this type of stuff as progressives because we believe in progress. And as long as we're progressing forward, we're winning. Yep. And we have to get these sheep Democrat out. We have to get them out. And so we have to fight and protect our progressive candidates running. So go to my website, joseforcongress.us, and donate. Because if you believe in this message of ending veteran suicide and putting real progressives in office that are ready for change, that are ready to actually present and implement policy, that's what we're here for. So donate. We're getting small dollar donations every day from veterans and military families and people who care about getting these bad Democrats out of office.
Yeah.
And so join that movement. I think our average contribution is like $23 right now.
Oh, nice.
So it's a really strong campaign, and it's great. And we also pay our workers a living wage to go knock on doors.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's so $15 minimum. We make sure to do that. So when you donate to our campaign, you're actually paying for a living wage to a worker, a campaign worker that's out knocking on their community. So this money isn't coming to me; it's going to actual people knocking on doors that are doing this for service.
That's more of us need to do that. And again, what's your Twitter handle, your Facebook?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter is at Jose Caballero SD, and my Facebook is Jose 4 SD as well. So those are my pages. You can also follow me on Instagram, which is at jose.caballero.sd.
Okay, Jose, thank you for being here and for discussing these important issues. Everybody, please follow him on Twitter. Please donate to him. Any amount would help. We need more young people like him in our Congress. This is a movement. It's everybody, not one person. So let's continue that. Thanks for watching, guys.